Hi there, folks, and welcome to Travel and Sip. My name's Kieran, and I'm joined, of course, by my good friend Ingrid. Hi, Ingrid. Um,
Hi.
Guys, we are bringing episode 5 of Travel and Sip, a show that hopes to give you a taste of the world. So, today, where are we off to? We've been to some great places so far in our first 4 weeks. Uh, this time, it's a little bit closer to home. It's a place located in the southwest of Australia, a place with one of the uh, longest histories of human civilization, not just in Australia, but in the world, and a place that is very much famous, probably since the early 2000s, for its wine production. Ingrid, where are we off to today?
Well, Kieran, today we are off to the beautiful region of Margaret River in Western Australia.
Beautiful, beautiful. So we've got a map here for those who don't know where Margaret River is located. We are in the southwest of WA, Western Australia. A couple of hours, or about 3 hours, I think it is, Ingrid, from
It
Perth by
is. Yep,
car
3 hour
thereabouts.
drive from Perth. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how you can get to Margaret River, Ingrid.
Yeah, so you can actually fly in. Most people would fly into Perth and then potentially hire a car and drive down to Margaret River from there, which, as we just said, is about 3 hours, which is what I did. So I was
Mhm.
actually just in Margaret River last year, first time I've ever been, and absolutely loved it. Hence why we thought we'd have a chat about it today, because I know, Kieran, you are yet to go, but it's high on your wish list.
It's not too far away, Ingrid. In fact, if we can still get there this year, myself and my wife are looking to get down there if we can, but certainly very, very much high on the priority list.
Absolutely. So I would highly recommend it. The other way that you actually can, well, they were going to start flights in March this year, but of course, because of everything that's happened, I'm not sure if that will go ahead when things restart. But Jetstar was actually going to start direct flights into Busselton from Melbourne. So for those of us who are lucky enough to live in Melbourne, like Kieran and myself, there was actually a direct way to get to Margaret River, which is basically Busselton's like the start of Margaret River region, and from there you can drive down into the wine region. And the beautiful beaches and cave network that is down there as well. So
Indeed, and
very
we see
easy.
there we're right on the coast here with Margaret River. So talk to me first of all, Ingrid. The first thing I'd like to know is a little bit about the climate down there. What time of year did you visit, and what was the climate like?
Yeah, so we were there in early November, and it was very temperate. So fairly, it wasn't warm, I would say, but talking, I don't know, 19 to 22 degrees. I think we got a
Sure.
couple of days that bumped up into sort of 24, 25, and it was probably about 3 to 5 degrees warmer than what it was back home in Melbourne. So I don't think it's exactly consistent in that the whole time, but it can be a little bit. It's 3 hours south of Perth, so it can be a bit cooler than what Perth will be, but still gets that nice temperate weather of Western Australia.
So it really sounds like a place that's probably great year round. I would think Margaret River.
Absolutely.
Um, so talk to us. Like really today, I want to pick your brains a little bit, Ingrid, about things to experience in Margaret River, and one of them certainly food and drink. So as always, I might start off just by asking you what your drink is of choice today.
Yes. So my drink of choice today is this lovely bottle here. Oh, we cannot see
Uh-huh.
the label. There we go. So this is a Fire Gully Shiraz. It's a 2014 vintage, and it's actually a bottle that I bought when I was in Margaret River last year. And this particular wine is from a vineyard called Piero's, and this photo here is of the Piero's vineyard. It's a gorgeous little family-owned and run winery. The Fire Gully range is the name of their vineyard of where these particular grapes, the Shiraz grapes, come from. So it's
Mhm.
actually grown in a slightly in Margaret River region, but just down the road from where their Piero's winery is. So they've got a range of different wines that they offer, but they're very much a small operation. The winemaker, I believe, is actually the owner as well of the vineyard, and a great team of staff at the cellar door as well, who were just fabulous. And we've got really fond memories of spending a fair amount of time just sitting there and chatting through the different wines that they have, and just really good people and really down to earth, and no pretension either, that you can get sometimes at wineries. If you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable and you're not the most confident person when it comes to wine, sometimes it can be a little bit daunting to go into some of those vineyards where perhaps you don't feel like you know enough, and you're not sure how to actually approach it. Piero's was one I felt that anybody could walk into and you would always feel immediately at home, which is really nice.
Yeah. And that's what you want, isn't it? Because we're not all wine connoisseurs. I know certainly I like to drink the odd glass of wine here and there, and certainly on our sessions here, Ingrid. But I don't know the ins and outs of wine, and the last thing you want is to be made to feel like that way. And it's really
Exactly.
great to get an inclusive sort of place where they really want to educate you about what they do, and they share that passion, I guess, for what they're producing.
Correct. And what are you drinking, Kieran? Have you picked a
Well,
wine?
today, do you know what, Ingrid? When I was working in restaurants, I came across a few Margaret River Sauvignon Blancs. Now I know it's really famous for its reds, and you've got the Shiraz there, but also they have quite a good range of Sauvignon, usually crossed with a Semillon,
Yep.
or mixed with a Semillon. So I've got a Semillon Sauvignon Blanc here from Deep Woods Estate. And this one, I don't have the Margaret River memories, you see, to go off, but really I do trust my local bottle shop and their recommendations. And this one seemed like a good one. It's a 2019, but it's really quite crisp. That's what I find. I'm not a big fan of Sauvignon Blancs in general, and that's generally because you get sort of that New Zealand really fruity, robust sort of
Yep.
flavour. The ones from Margaret River I find are quite crisp and light. This one's actually been oaked, and it's got that nice oaky flavour to it, but really
Lovely.
quite refreshing. I
Well,
find it
cheers
just
then,
that
Kieran.
crisp one. So cheers to that, Ingrid. So tell me a little bit more about, while we're on the drink, tell me a little bit more about what you ate and what you drank. Any recommendations you've got from Margaret River?
Yeah, well, we did plenty of that, that's for sure. So this one here, this is a photo of a tapas degustation lunch that we had actually at a winery called Hayshed Hill, who have an on-site restaurant called Rustica. It was a recommendation by some good friends of ours who had been to Margaret River the year before we went. And a lot of what we did actually in Margaret River were recommendations from a number of different friends that had been before. I love that. And this particular friend actually is also a travel agent, so he clearly knows what he's talking about. So they enjoyed this lunch at this beautiful winery at Hayshed Hill Rustica restaurant, and we thought we'd do the same, and it was fantastic. So it basically was a series of small tapas-style plates that you enjoyed. So I've got the little mini seafood paella here with some fresh seafood, obviously Margaret River being great for seafood, being on the water there. And I think perhaps on the next slide as well, I've got another photo from the same meal where we enjoyed some pork belly as well. So great little bite-sized pieces. It was really great, and it came with matched wines the whole way through as well, and they were all wines from that vineyard. So fantastic way to experience the local produce, and one of my most memorable meals in the Margaret River region for sure.
Beautiful. Are you taking us back a little bit to last week, Ingrid, with our tapas photos here? And as we learned last week, it's a great thing to do is to eat and enjoy some little bits of food, and that way you can just drink even more of the wine because you don't get too drunk too quickly. I think is
very true. Very true. Always a good thing. Always a good thing.
So tell us some more, Ingrid. Where else can we go when we're in Margaret River?
Well, there's so many different places, Kieran, and I mean, this was just one of the places we ate, and obviously there was a winery there as well, which we did some tastings at, and then there's this winery as well, which is the Lewin Estate, which a lot of people may have heard of. It's quite famous, and it's where they held Day on the Green for Western Australia as well. So they have some beautiful wines there, and we enjoyed a particular tasting of one that we ended up making a purchase of that was quite an expensive bottle, but we think well worth it for the cellar collection in their art series bottles. So quite well known vineyard in Lewin Estate, and quite beautiful in terms of the architecture of the grounds and the building as well. So well worth a visit there. And then I think we've got, and what have we got here? So, of course, if you are not a wine drinker, and I know not everybody's a wine drinker, there are some great breweries in the Margaret River region as well. And I think I really enjoyed this because I do actually really love a beer, as you well know, Kieran. It's not just wine, but there were some great breweries. So this particular photo I took was at the Wild Hop Brewing Company. Which was fantastic. Really loved it. It came with free, I think it was jalapeno salted popcorn.
Wow.
So great, little jar of that to have with your beer, which was fantastic. And they had a great beer garden outside as well as the indoor venue. So a really great spot for a drink. And we also went to another brewery called the Beer Farm, which was in an old dairy milking shed, and they converted that into their brewery, and that was another great spot for a beer. So what else? I had Caves Road Brewing and Distillery Company actually is another one. So if you're not into your wines, they actually do wine tasting there as well, but they have gin. They have a gin distillery on site, and they also have beers as well, Caves Road Brewing as well. So if you're not into your wines, there's plenty of other options for you, and I think that's just something to keep in mind. Another one of my favourite spots going back to wines actually for tastings was one called Voyager Estate. And Voyager Estate was right down south, quite close to Lewin Estate actually as well, in the Margaret River region, and fantastic for their sit down. They did their tastings really differently. So instead of, where you usually with tastings, you go up to the bar and you do your different tastings, these guys actually had you sat down and they gave you an iPad and you actually chose which tasting you wanted from their selection, and they came and delivered it to your table, and you'd sit there and have that full tasting experience. So you really could take your time and enjoy it. They had all the tasting notes, and then they would have someone come over and you could ask more questions and all of that as well. So I think that was a really great experience too, for something a bit more unique and a little bit fancier, I suppose, than your standard cellar door experience.
Treat yourself. And look, Ingrid, is there a typical beer from Margaret River? We know that with the wine, it's kind of Shiraz, it's Semsav, Sauv Blanc. But in terms of beer, is there a prevailing style that was apparent in Margaret River?
Not really, no. They just loved their craft beers, to be honest. I'm actually just thinking now, I'm like, I think we went to almost as many breweries as we did wineries, if I'm honest, because now I'm remembering there was another one we went to, which was up further north in the northern region of Margaret River, called Eagle Bay Brewing. And that was another brew house, and they had some great, so I'm really into IPAs. So I love IPAs, XPAs, pale ales, and all sorts of, I love West Coast IPAs and New England IPAs and all of those different really hoppy drinks. And I did find there were a lot of those. So I don't know if it's a specialty of such of the region. I think they just really loved their craft beers. So they did some really great IPA style, which is probably why I was enjoying it so much.
Sure. And look, and talking of the jalapenos in that picture, you've just triggered my brain because I'm drinking this Semsav Blanc. I think that's what I taste is jalapenos in it,
really?
Which is really interesting. It's this nice little jalapeno flavor.
It is interesting, bit of spice. You can get that in Semillon sometimes, actually. So yeah, a little bit of that spice flavour.
I'm not a fan. I think it's growing on me, that one.
Okay.
And you've mentioned a little bit there about the Lewin Estate, and this is it's a little bit of an early segue into Did You Know, Ingrid? We'll come to this at the end. Did you know that Lewin was actually the name of the Dutch vessel, which probably was the first European vessel to come past the Cape there in the 1620s, which is where you get your name from, the Lewin Estate.
Yes.
The other thing I picked up there is that you had some stuff on Caves Road, so that probably is a good segue into things that you can see and do in the region, because there's a few caves around and that sort of stuff. So tell me, what did you see and do when you were in Margaret River?
Yeah, so one thing we probably didn't see and do was the caves. I actually have a bit of, I know, I get a little bit of claustrophobia, so going to caves is probably not the highest thing on my priority list. So, yeah, it's not that I wouldn't recommend it. I have other friends who've been and been to some of the caves and absolutely said they were phenomenal and outstanding. So
Indeed.
I think if I went back, I'd definitely go to one or two of them just to have a look. But it probably on this occasion, because it's not my first thing that I would usually go to, there were so many other things to see and do that I didn't quite get there. So speaking of Lewin, Cape Lewin is the southernmost point in the Margaret River region, essentially on that cape there of Margaret River. And then at the northernmost end is Cape Naturalist. So you've actually got in between those 2 points, you've got a cape to cape walking track, which is one of the most famous walks that people can do in Australia as well. It's a multi-day walk and not something that we did, but again, something that you can do. We went to both capes and explored the lighthouses. You can go in and walk around. There's a little cafe on site at each one. So a great little spot to be able to go. You know, it's family friendly as well. So really easy to be able to get around there. The Saturday farmers markets of Margaret River are famous in the region, so I highly recommend go early if you're going to go there. We got there right when they opened at about, I think it was 8 o'clock, 7:30, something like that. The car park was already filling up and we left a couple of hours later and there were cars parked all the way up the street back into town. So absolutely crazy how busy it was, and we weren't there in a holiday period or anything like that. So I definitely recommend making sure you go early. And so if you do want to buy some fresh produce and go for a picnic for the day or something like that, which is what we did, then I definitely recommend that as something to do as well in the area. And then I think I might have some other photos of some of the other things that we did in the region, Kieran. So this one here, this is Canal Rocks. So Canal Rocks is up in the more northern part of Margaret River and is a beautiful series of rocks. And I think there's one more photo possibly of me with the rocks behind me on the outpost there. Great opportunity to kind of carefully, obviously, climb on a few of the rocks and get some great views with the water splashing up against them. Yeah. Fantastic. Pretty windy though, as you can see, my hair was going everywhere. This is Forest Rise Eco Lodges or Eco Chalets. I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact wording, but Forest Rise was where one of the places we stayed at, which was sort of in the central region. So it was really that sort of 45 minutes south to Margaret River, 45 minutes north to Yallingup. So a really great place to base ourselves for the first few days. And they were just magic little log cabins in the middle of the forest, and they were dotted all throughout the property, and they had walking tracks around the property as well. So, and they provided mountain bikes, which you could take on the property as well if you wanted to. So a great little place to stay that I would highly recommend for couples. And then from there, we also went to a beautiful place called Hamlin Bay. So Hamlin Bay is famous for its stingrays. So the stingrays actually come right up to you in the water, which you can see there. That's actually 2 different stingrays there in the shadow of one at the back there. And my partner was actually standing in the water and they were coming up all around his feet. It was amazing to see. So definitely if you want that real special wildlife experience, it's definitely pretty cool. And the water's, I mean, it's so blue and so crystal clear, you can see from there. And it's pretty warm as well, so you weren't exactly freezing getting your feet in there.
And did you see any surfers while you were there? I hear it's a bit of a mecca for surfers, Margaret.
Yeah, so we watched a few people surfing down at Smith's Beach when we were there, which is just north of Hamlin Bay, and actually where I enjoyed a coffee sort of at the next cove over from there as well. They had a great little cafe that you could enjoy a coffee overlooking the water there. So yeah. So you couldn't swim in this bay, but the next one over was more open. So you've just got full access to my photos there, Kieran. Got it all happening. But a great spot to enjoy a coffee. And then the next beach over, you have got all the surfers at Smith's Beach. So if you are into surfing, there is some great surf down there too. Yeah.
And I want you to tell me about your sunsets, because one of the great things about going to Western Australia is the sunsets you see in that part of the world. So,
absolutely.
So tell us about this one.
Yeah, so this one was taken at Sugarloaf Rock, which is right up in the top corner of the Cape Naturalist part of the Cape, so right up the top. And we basically split our time between, so we stayed half of our time at Forest Rise, which is in the central part, as I said, and we spent most of the time there. We went sort of south, and then we made our way north, and we actually stayed right up the top near Cape Naturalist on Bunker Bay. They've got a Pullman resort at Bunker Bay and beautiful white sand beaches, and Sugarloaf is just a 10-minute drive from there. So we went to see the sunset one night from that point, and absolutely gorgeous. I've heard that Canal Rocks is actually a great spot to watch the sunset as well. So that's another recommendation too. But really, anywhere along that coastline, you're going to get some gorgeous views of the sun setting behind the rocks and the water like that.
Beautiful.
This one here is Bunker Bay. So, yeah, so that's a photo of the water and the beach at Bunker Bay. It's absolutely gorgeous. White sand, clear blue water. Yeah, beautiful spot to go.
Beautiful beaches and some wildflowers.
And the wildflowers. So this is all the way down at the bottom at Cape Lewin. And we saw wildflowers. Actually, we were really lucky because it was right at the end of the wildflower season, and it's sort of, you don't really know if you're going to see them that late in the season, but we were lucky last year that we did, and we saw a lot of wildflowers on that drive. I mean, Western Australia is well known for its wildflowers, and it was spectacular. I would love to go back at the height of wildflower season, which is generally, I think, like September, October, but it can be earlier some years. So it's really hard to know. You know, it depends on the weather of the year. But we were lucky enough to see the end of it in the start of November, and it was well worth it.
And certainly different parts of Western Australia have the season at different times with the wildflowers.
They do.
So
yeah.
It's a place, if you are going on a bit of a driving holiday around WA, you can time it to see wildflowers for quite some time.
Correct.
And on that note, Ingrid, sort of how did you do this trip? So how long were you there for? How long do you think people would need to travel to Margaret River for?
Yeah, so we had 5 nights there, and I think that was a great amount of time to be able to travel around, see sort of most of the, I guess, key things, but there were definitely some things on our list we didn't get to see. And we didn't, you know, we probably went to half a dozen wineries over that time period, but just 1 or 2 a day because we were driving. We chose not to take a tour, so we were conscious. You know, obviously we couldn't do too many tastings at once, so it was sort of 1 or 2 a day that we visited. And then had, you know, a couple of things where we took a taxi, local taxi service or whatever if we needed to, if we decided to go out in the evening and that sort of thing. The roads are quite dark there at night, so a lot of the time they won't recommend that you go out very far if you're staying sort of in the remote areas of Margaret River on some of those back roads. They sort of don't recommend, you know, you need to be really careful if you're driving at night and you're not used to country roads. I grew up in the country, so it's quite normal for me, but there's a lot of wildlife around, so you do need to be a bit careful. But 5 nights I think is a perfect amount of time in Margaret River. I'd even extend it. You could go for a full week if you had the time to do that. But I think 4 or 5 nights would be a perfect amount of time where you'd still feel like you got a really good break and you got to have a good look around, and you can drive to and from Perth in that sort of 5-day break and still feel like you get a good rest when you're down there.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much, Ingrid. I've got a few little facts now just to test your knowledge.
Please,
of Margaret
you're
River.
always the history buff with me, so please tell me.
So a few things I just want to know. Did you know this, Ingrid? So question is, did you know that Margaret River, the area of Margaret River, is known as Wooditchup by the Noongar people, the local people, and that's named after Wooditch, who was the creator of the river in The Dreaming.
Ah, there you go. I did not know that.
Still quite an active community in the area as well. And as we said, it's one of the oldest civilizations in the world in that region, and certainly in, I think it's the Devil's Lair Cave. You can find evidence of human occupation from about 50,000 years ago. So
wow. I saw the sign for that one when I was there. Didn't go there, but saw the sign.
You've always got to leave something for next time, Ingrid.
Exactly.
Now, Margaret River itself was probably settled by Europeans probably in the mid-1800s, and the name Margaret River was named after Margaret Witcher, who was John Bussell's cousin. Now, John Bussell was one of the original settlers and the founder of the European civilization down there in Margaret River.
Probably where Busselton was named after, I'm guessing.
I would very much think so, Ingrid. Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. Now,
Yeah.
do you know how many people, what the population of Margaret River would be, Ingrid? Take a
I
guess.
don't actually know. I've got no idea. It can't be very high. I mean, there didn't seem to be a lot of people who lived down there. So
Well, definitely the permanent residence is not very high. It's about 9,000,
hmm,
but they do welcome over 500,000 visitors each year to Margaret River.
that doesn't surprise me. There's a lot of accommodation, a lot of things for tourists to do down there. So it doesn't surprise me that it's so popular. But yeah, 9,000. Yeah, and it's so spread out, Margaret River. It takes an hour and a half from top to bottom to actually drive the actual distance of
Yeah,
the Margaret River region. So yeah, if you think about that, 9,000 people is not many people at all.
yeah. Now, did you see any wildlife much when you were there, Ingrid?
We did actually. We saw a ton. So obviously, lots of kangaroos.
Uh-huh.
We saw some great. We saw a great sea eagle actually
Okay.
down on the water, which was brilliant, and some great seabirds as well. We saw a fantastic big blue tongue lizard in amongst the
Right.
wildflowers as well. So yeah, a few things actually.
Well, do you know that another thing you can look out for 6 months of the year are whales, and it has twice as many whales that pass by than anywhere you'll find on the east coast of Australia. So quite a huge whale population.
I didn't know it was twice as many. There you go. I knew it was good for whales. We were too late, I think, in the year when we were
Yeah.
there. It was right at the end of the whale season. We looked out for them, didn't see any. But yeah, wow, twice as many is amazing.
Absolutely. And look, the final did you know for today, Ingrid, is did you know that wine in Margaret River has been around since the 60s? And the first winery was Vas Felix, which was 1967. And that was Dr. Tom Cullity who planted those vines. Um, and since then, it's probably been a lot of family owned until really the last 20 years, where it's become a lot more corporate, I think, and a lot bigger wineries in the region. So really starting to boom there in Margaret River.
And we actually went to Vas Felix as well, and it is an absolutely gorgeous old building. Beautiful, beautiful winery to visit in terms of the actual building itself. Really, really nice. So yeah, and we had some great tastings there too. So definitely worth a visit.
Perfect. So look, Ingrid, you've made me want to go there even more. So I think we're definitely moving it right to the top of our list for our next trip when we can, obviously. So thank you so much for your insights. Any last words?
Oh, I don't think so, Kieran. I think it's just the usual drink well and travel often.
And
Cheers.
until next time, cheers.